from, oh, as requested from our last webinar where we went over DSD receiving and POs, Jen's going to take us through some PDA best practices, just general, and then you guys can feel free to ask any questions that you like, and then she can walk you guys through any specifics. So Jen, if you would like to take it away.
Thank you, Christina. What I am going to do, since this was requested specifically from the Purchasing Receiving DSD webinar we had late last month, is I'm going to focus on that with the PDA and the best practices using that. If there's any other questions you have come up about anything else you'd like to see on the PDA, please let us know in the chat and I can go over that after the receiving portion. So it's a little hard to duplicate a PDA, so I am pulling up the PDA screen here. I have it fairly zoomed in, so you can see it pretty well, but if you need me to zoom in a little bit more, just let me know. It's usually meant for on a smaller device, so it's a little, it's a little compacted, so just let me know if I need to zoom in a little bit. But this is the main screen, and like I said, a large part of this came from they wanted to see, because a lot of receiving purchase order is done on the PDA, it's done on the handheld, so wanted to go over some best practices with that on here. So starting right here on the main screen, the main ones we're going to be looking at are purchasing, receiving, and deliveries. If they're wanting to create a purchase order from the handheld, the associate would come in, click on purchasing, and then they would want to pick if they want to work on an existing document, which would be open document, or they could click on more and click on new purchase order. Some best practices right here from the start. If you are using the handheld, there is some additional configuration options that you can do from here. So I'll just click on configuration just so you can see them. This is very much what works best for you. You can configure after you scan an item, where do you want it to go? Do you want it to stay on the UPC or do you want it to go right on the quantity field? So 0 is UPC and 1 is quantity. So that's a choice you can easily configure, or the person using it can easily configure. There's also a default quantity. Some people would like to have a default quantity of 1 be entered when they're scanning and ordering. You want it to do 2, 3, or 0, so you don't have a default quantity, you can do that. And then the last configuration setting that you can do is go to item line. So when you're looking at the item lines, afterwards, what item line would you like to go to? Defaultly, it'll go to the first item. That's pretty default, but if you wanted to go to line 2 or 3, you could change that. Once you have this modified to how you would like, you would just hit Save Profile. Give the profile a name. Leaving it blank will not save it. So you can do default, you can do 1, 2, whatever works, and then that will be saved as a profile for default. Profiles are usually linked to the operator logged into the handheld, so it'll automatically store to the operator that logged in originally to the handheld. But if you wanted to assign this to more or use the default one like I typed in, so it would be the default setting, that works too, so everybody gets all these default settings. So back to our purchase order. So we're going to create a new purchase order. So the first thing, whenever you're creating a purchase order, just like what we went through with Reversa, you need to have a vendor. So a lot of people don't know the vendor ID offhand. You have a worker out on the floor. They have a PDA. You told them to go make an order. They don't know that. So they can use this little question mark right here, and they can find the vendor right here. They can search, or they can find it in the list, depending on how many items or vendors you have in the system. Will make this whichever one works best for you. Sorry, clicked out of that. But so I'm just going to go ahead and use the 99 Adams brand, but you can easily go search for them there. Once you pick your vendor, it starts the purchase order. So this is the header. It's giving you the vendor ID up here, what the order number is here. If you wanting to have the time set, that can be configured in the order date and the delivery date. If there's something in here that you would like to change, that's right here. You can do order header. You can change the reference number. You can change the date. It is limited on the PDA. You can adjust more in the back. It is a little limited on the PDA what you can change and add on here. Just because of capacity to the size, we can customize it to add more fields if it's something that you frequently do want to add and adjust on the PDA, but there's a size You know, like you're looking at this screen a little large right now, but usually it's on a small, like phone size screen. So we try to target the normal ones that would be edited. Up here is where you can now add items. So adding items into your purchase order. It's usually the first thing that you're going to want to do. So you can just click on add items. And then right here's where they can now scan in the items they want to put in the purchase order. Usually this would be hooked up to some sort of device, so they can just hit a button, scan the UPC code, and put it in there. Since I am using this in a lab environment, I'm going to show you the other option, which is you can search. You can hand key in a code, or you can use the question mark over here. This will bring up a list of all of the items that are tied to this vendor. So they have a cost record that is associated to this vendor. So you can then just choose. You can search, of course, up here. You can choose the item you would like to add in there. By default, I did have it set to go stay on the UPC number, so that's the highlighted field. I did have a quantity of 1, so it is automatically ordering a quantity of 1. If you have it set like this on the handheld, you can easily tap down here and you can change that to 2. And then you can go ahead and scan the next item, or you can change that configuration so it can go into the case. If you're noticing here, like this is a little more limited. When we went over this with Diversa, you could change the, you could have the view, you could have all of that information for the item. It's just trying to get you the core information you need for the purchase order to fit in a nice way on the screen for you for the purchase order. So there's a little bit less, but it really pulled out the information, like what you're ordering in case, you know, the cost, the price, how many items you have on order. So I just ordered 2. If it was previously on a purchase order, it would be showing up here. So maybe you know, oh, somebody already did a purchase order for this. I'll just add a second item in here. So just go back in here and I'll add a second item in here, and we'll just do a quantity of 5. Once they're complete, they're done, they've scanned all the items, they can go back down here to click on order. This will bring them back to the main order screen. And from here, you have a few options. You can show the current line, which, like I said, will show you the current line, the last line that you scanned. You can look at that order header again, which we went over. We can suspend the document, which doesn't close the document. It leaves it open so you can keep going back later and add more items, or somebody else can add more items to it. There's also, if you click on more, you can refresh the item. So if somebody has maybe made a cost change or price change to the item, you can refresh the item so that will show up in the purchase order. Once you create a purchase order, it's frozen in time. So if you added an item and then a cost change was done after that, it won't reflect that cost change unless you refresh it. You can list the line items, which will show all the line items on the purchase order. You can print the purchase order, and you can close the document. You can also look at those configuration settings right here. So I'm going to go ahead and close the document because I want to go move on to the receiving document. So once you close the document, it automatically will bring you back to the purchase order menu. So if you wanted to create another purchase order, maybe you're creating a purchase order for multiple vendors, you can go through, you can create another one, go click on more, click a new purchase order for that vendor, and keep going. I'm going to go back to menu. So these bottom keys are really to navigate throughout the PDA. It's not really navigating within the purchase order or receiving document. When we move to that, this is to actually navigate to the different menus inside the purchase order. So as I click back on menu, it's going to bring us back to that main menu. And then I can go ahead and I can now build a receiving document. So a question that did come up with the last webinar was you can create a receiving document from a closed purchase order, and they wanted to see how to do that on the handheld. So this is going to look very familiar to what we just went through with the purchase order. So first you can open up a brand new document. This will open up a brand new document. You will select your vendor. It will not be pulling from a closed purchase order. It's just a new document. You're just doing a receiving, not based on a purchase order. That is what this option is here. If you click on more, I misspoke. I'm sorry. The open document will reopen one that's already open. My apologies. So this is, if you already have an open receiving document, it'll go into a suspended open receiving document. New document will create a new document or you can choose to open one from a closed purchase order. So when you click on the new document, I think I'm getting myself confused, I'm apologizing. Yes, if you open up an open document, this will open it up. I'm sorry, got myself a little confused with the verbiage here. Open document will allow you to open up a suspended or one that was based on a closed purchase order. So I'm just going to reset, be a little more clear. When you come into the receiving menu, you have open document. If you have a previously suspended receiving order that you want to go back in and continue on, that would be where you would go. If you have a previously closed purchase order that you want to build a receiving document off of, you would also use open document. If you click on more and you're doing a new document, this would be a new standalone receiving document, not based on one that was suspended previously and not one that was from a closed purchase order. So for that, we're going to go into our open document. So when you go into open document, you're going to see all of the documents you can potentially open. So there is no differentiation here, unfortunately, based upon if it was a suspended receiving document or if it was a closed purchase order. You do have to know the vendor. So I know that I closed a purchase order from the Adams brand 99, so that is my closed purchase order. I can now build a receiving document off of. The other two are old receiving documents that I have previously suspended that I was working on with a different vendor. The other thing to remember is if you're coming in here and you're doing this based off of a closed purchase order or a suspended document, it will, if you have more than one per vendor, it will grab the oldest. So if I went in there and I had built like 2 or 3 purchase order documents from the Adams brand, I did one yesterday, I did one the day before, I did one today, it will not show in here 3 times. It will only show in here once per vendor. And when you click on it, it will grab the oldest one, so it would grab the one from 2 days ago. I didn't do that. I only started one today, so I can click on my by vendors, and this is going to be the one that I just did today. There's my order number that I created earlier, my transaction number, there's my date. It's giving me that information, so it does try to tell you if you are grabbing one from a little bit older, you can look by the date, you can look by the transaction number, the order number. This is the correct one, so I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, I want to open a receiving document based on this closed purchase order. So I open up my receiving document. You can come in here beforehand if you really want to make sure that you have grabbed the right one. You can view the purchase order before you go through and you receive it, so you can show a summary. See, hey, I ordered 7 cases for $52.25. Click on receiving to go back. You can also go under more and you can look at your line items. So you can list your line items. So this will show you what you ordered. So there's my 2 cases and my 5 cases that I had previously ordered. So just kind of a view, that way you can see, make sure you're in the right document or just to see what you're expecting to receive before you start scanning. So now you can start adding items. So if you click on add items when you're in a closed purchase order that you built a receiving document off of, you can add items. So you can scan additional items here, or you can scan the item that you've already previously ordered. So the system is going to allow you to scan, like you've got a different item that they came in, you can scan a different item and add it to the receiving document. Maybe they sent more items than what you originally requested, you can add them to the receiving document. If you do scan an item that you did have in your original order, so I'm just going to click on that one. That was the one that we'd already ordered 2 cases. It will automatically pull in the 2. It's saying the item is found in the document because it was already in there as a purchase order. So you can come down here and you can say, well, I received 2, but I ordered 2, but I actually only received 1. So you can come in and adjust that. And now you can see I had on order 2, I only actually received 1, and that is going to reflect on the final cost. If you did have some additional items that you had not put in the order, so we'll just click on the first one. So you can then add, maybe you've got a couple cases of this that you weren't expecting, and you're saying, you know what, it's fine, I sell a lot of these. You can go ahead and click and you can receive those 2 cases. If you accidentally scan an item you didn't want to include on this receiving document, you can always delete the item after you've scanned it in. It will not delete the item from your system. It will only delete the item from the receiving document. That is definitely an option. That's what that's here for. Once you're done, you can go back to receiving. You can click on your summary so you can see this now your new summary because it's changed. You had 5 cases of the one item, 2 cases of the other, 1 case of the other. That should be 3. That should reflect in here. Click on receiving. You can go under more, and we're going to look at those line items. So now I have that additional item that I added the 2 cases of. There's my item I adjusted to 1 case, and then there's the 5 cases I never touched right there. And then you can also click on more, and you can list shortages. So if you come in here and you look at shortages, you can come and look and see what items you are off of. So you ordered 2, but you only received 1. That's a shortage of this. And this item down here, I didn't order any, but I got 2. So shortages is a misnomer. It's really anything that is different from the original purchase order that's now in the receiving document. The one item I didn't touch, I did that on purpose because I ordered 5, I received 5. If you don't touch it, it assumes that it stays the same. So, but this will show you anything that's different. Coming back in here, that's a few of the options you can do. If there's like an open ring department, you have a code that's not scanning, you don't want to add the item, you can just add like an open ring department as a receiving. You can look at the current line, which would be the last line that you touched. The receiving header, very similar to the purchase order. The suspend document, this would be the same idea as what I said with the purchase order. Suspending will leave it in an open format, so you can come back and continue to add items to this document later. It's not closed, it won't affect your inventory. So some people like to suspend the document on the handheld so that way somebody in the back can double check it before they close it. You can do that. That's what that would be for. And then click on more. Item refresh, the same thing I went over with the purchase order. If a cost change has happened on the item, you can then refresh the item so the system can pick it up because it is a frozen in time document. You can look at the line items. I showed you that. You can list not marked, so you can list all the items that were not marked. Again, I did this on purpose. I did not scan that one item that I had ordered 5 cases for, so you can come in here and say, I didn't scan that, so maybe you need to go scan it, make sure you received it properly so it hasn't been marked as scanned in. And sorry, we did list shortages. You can print the document from here. You have to you can just click on print. You have to make sure that you have a printer that is linked up to the PDA, or it will print out to, if you have like a label printer or something like that, it may print out there. And then you can close the document from here. So the closed document is when you will affect inventory. So if you're wanting to make sure that these items are added in there, this is my fault. I did not have a, get back in there. I don't have a printer set up with my handheld. So it kind of froze it up there. I shouldn't have clicked on that, but refresh this. All right, we'll go back in there. So it should now be an open document because I haven't done anything with it. If this does happen on your handheld, that's actually a good gotcha. It won't close the document on you. It won't do anything. If you do, something happens, somebody puts the handheld down, it times out, something like this happens where they click on print, they don't have a printer hooked up, so it's going to freeze, or internet goes out, anything like that, things happen. It won't do anything to the document. It's going to save it in that suspended state so that way you can go back in there and do whatever it is that you need to do. I'm just going to go ahead and reopen it, go back to where we were. And then, like I said, you can close the document from here, and you can also do the configuration. Just like I showed you with the purchase order, it's really the same option. So you can see the POS after scan if you want to go to UPC, if you wanted to go to quantity, the default quantity, and which item lines you want to go to, and then your save profile. So those are all the same options really as that. And right from here, you can also, like I said, click on Close Document, or you can go all the way back to the main menu. Again, if you do go back to the main menu and you don't suspend or close the document, it will automatically suspend the document. It won't ever close a document on you without you specifically telling it to. And the reason being is that this is, again, when it affects inventory, all of these cases will be added to your inventory once you close it. I'm going to go ahead and close, go back to the receiving menu. The other one that I did want to go over was the DSD document. I'm going to click on menu to go back, so that'll bring me back to the main menu, and that is deliveries. There's always a lot of different verbiages when we're looking at this. Deliveries, DSD, they're all the same thing. Deliveries is direct store deliveries, so there is some verbiage changes as you're going through. But what this really is that the DSD document is another way to receive in items, and there's no purchase order, there's no billing document. It's just one shot. It's a combination billing document and receiving. So this can be used all the time if that's the way that you prefer to have it used, or you can use each individual document. It's up to you, or you can use a combination. So deliveries, this is going to be pretty similar to what we just went through. The key difference with this is that I can't build a new document from a closed purchase order. There's no tie-in. If I build a new document, it's a brand new document. There's no tie-in to anything. If I do come in here to open a document, it will just open up an existing suspended document. And again, we have those configuration options. So I'm just going to go back and we're just going to build a new document. Again, you just got to pick a vendor. Just do there, do a little bit different here, and then this looks very similar to what we just went through. You click on Add Items to add items. You can click on Add Departments to do an open ring department. You can then show your current line. The additional things that are added when you are doing a DSD or deliveries document is invoice header, invoice total, because it's a built-in receiving and billing document, so you need to say how you're invoicing the vendor. How are you paying that vendor for the merchandise you received? If you saw the Thriversa, you would remember that there was some difference that you could do with the billing document. So if you need to do any sort of adjustment up or adjustment down when you're paying for the document, list line items, anything like that, you can do that from here. The other core difference, if you're looking at this, is that there is no close option. So I can suspend the document from here if I'm doing DSD, but I can't close the document from here. That is by design, and because of the idea is this is a built-in receiving and billing document. So the billing, they're assuming that the person doing the receiving is not going to be paying the vendor. So you can suspend it, it will go to the back, and then they could cut the check or whatever they need to do to pay that vendor, and then they can close it from there. So that's why you're not going to see that as an option here. But you can do the other options. You can add the items, you can adjust up, you can adjust down. You just simply don't have that final payment option that does need to be done in the back because, like I said, the assumption is you don't have the money to pay the vendor on hand. It all works the same way, so I don't think I need to go through that since I kind of did it already twice, but just some additional things I did want to show just as I kind of briefly went over it was there is some additional things down here that are outside of the document, like I said. So you need to do something else. Maybe you're adding an item and you realize that the item price is wrong to a document, anything like that. That's what you can do. You can verify an item outside the document, or you can modify an item outside the document. So if you scan an item, adding it to the document, you kind of see, we'll just go ahead and do that. We'll see, oh, this is the wrong price. This is the wrong cost. There's something incorrect in this item. And you can click on modify, and you will be brought right to the maintenance menu for doing item maintenance. So you can change the regular price, the TPR price, sale price, general item information, cost, shelf location, alternate code, price level. You can go through and you can modify all that information. Once you're done, you can then click on DSD to go right back to the DSD document. Maybe you just want to verify some information on an item. This is not a maintenance, this is verifying. So you're just looking at the item information. You just want to double check the information. That's what that's for. And again, DSD is the button you're going to want to hit to go back to that document. If you click back, this is going to go back to the main menu. This is going to go back a screen. It doesn't always work to go back to the DSD document, so I always recommend if you're in the middle of doing receiving, purchase order, any of those, you always click on these buttons, because if I click on back, it did work this time, but it doesn't always work correctly like you think it will. Tasks, just to go over tasks really quick, this would be if you're wanting to create a label batch while you're scanning and receiving items in DSD. You can easily do that. You can, if it's on a batch, you can look and see if it's in a batch. And you can also do a movement analysis on the item. So it's just kind of some additional information on the item while you're receiving it if you would like to get that. It's a little quick link to do that. Menu will bring you back to the main menu, and then, like I said, back is supposed to bring you back to the previous screen. I just always say if you're knowing where you need to go, it's better to click on it. Usually works, but not always works like you want it to. So that was the main, I know, questions that we had coming out of the last webinar. Is there any other questions or anything else that came in that you would like to see as a best practice on the handheld while we have it up?
It doesn't look like we've gotten any questions in just yet. Yeah, I don't think there's any additional questions. I think you covered everything, Jen.
Okay.
All right. Perfect, guys. Did you have anything else, Jen, or are you good?
No, that was, I was just going to say thank you.
Okay. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us today. I did record this, so it will be up on our YouTube channel and on our website. And if you do have any other questions that do come up, feel free to reach out and our help desk can help you from there. So have a good day, everybody. We'll see you hopefully next week at our data maintenance webinar, which is at the regular time on Thursday at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.